Welcome. Today we're looking closely at a case, one that hasn't received a lot of mainstream attention, but it absolutely needs it. It's a deeply troubling story, a tragedy really, wrapped in layers of suspicion and, well, what the family alleges is outright deception by those in charge. And importantly, this comes to us because Crystal Jones's own family reached out. They're fighting for truth, fighting against what feels like, impossible odds.
That's right. We often cover cases where justice seems hard to find, but this one, it feels particularly heavy. This story comes straight from Crystal's sister, Jana. She's determined, absolutely determined, to bring light to her sister's death and what she firmly believes is a suppression of truth by local authorities in Louisiana. From the moment Crystal was found, the family had serious questions they say weren't just ignored, but actively shut down by officials. This is the story of Crystal McCrory Jones. Okay, so Crystal Jones. She was a vibrant, loving woman, just 43 years old when her life ended on February 9th, 2023.
Oak Grove, Louisiana. The official cause of death: suicide. A single gunshot. But for her family, especially Jana, that explanation just never ever felt right. They believe it's a cover-up, plain and simple, designed to protect someone. In the scene, how was it found?
Reportedly discovered by a friend of Tony Jones, Crystal's husband, someone at the sheriff's department, for what he termed a welfare check. He claimed he found her with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But, like you said, the alarm bells for the family started ringing almost immediately. Why? Because Crystal's actions, everything she was doing right before she died, well, it painted a picture of someone planning for the future. Just weeks before, January 28th, 2023, she aced an education course exam. Got a 96%.
Wow, 96%.
Yeah. And then she received her certificate for it on February 1st. She was excited about going back to work as an insurance agent, even looking into getting higher certifications. That just doesn't track with someone about to take their own life, And then there were things like Google searches from a year before, like February 16th, 2022, for a semicolon tattoo.
Which is a symbol of overcoming struggles.
Yeah.
Right, not giving in.
Exactly. It's about survival, about choosing to continue. She saved inspirational quotes, kept her house really organized, and she was absolutely thrilled about becoming a grandmother for the first time. You put all that together, it's the opposite of someone contemplating suicide.
It really is. Actions of someone looking forward, embracing things. So those are the initial kind of gut feelings the family had. But then came something concrete, something undeniable: the coroner's report. While the final version listed the time of death as 5:05 p.m., the original timestamp, it clearly said 10:35 a.m.
10:35 a.m.
Yes. A 5.5-hour difference. Handwritten in, no explanation, nothing. That right there, that discrepancy, was the first huge red flag for Jana. It just screamed that something was wrong, and it pushed them to start digging themselves.
And that discrepancy is so crucial. It really forced them, to become investigators in their own sister's death, which is just unimaginable. So Jana, Crystal's sister, she did what the authorities maybe weren't doing. She got Tony Jones's cell phone location records for that day, and what she found, it completely contradicted his story.
What was his story?
He claimed he'd been at Forest High School all day, but the phone records, they showed pings at Sonic Walmart. And he didn't even arrive at the high school until around noon. But here's the kicker. The records showed him driving right to the West Carroll Sheriff's Department around 11 a.m.
11 a.m., which lines up almost perfectly with that original time of death, the 10:35 a.m.
Exactly. It aligns precisely.
So Jana takes this powerful evidence,
Yeah.
Tony's phone contradicting his alibi, the time discrepancy on the report, she takes it all to Sheriff Scott Matthews. This was February 23rd, 2023. And his reaction, it's honestly chilling. He flat out denied a specific time of death could even be on a death certificate. He accused Jana of having a false one.
Wow. Despite her having the document.
Right. And the cell phone data. He called it ludicrous and irrelevant to this case. Just dismissed it out of hand.
Ludicrous and irrelevant. That's quite a response when faced with evidence contradicting the official narrative. It suggests a real problem in how this was being handled from the start.
A huge problem. And it didn't stop there. What about the gun?
Yes, the gun, another major point of contradiction. In that same meeting, Sheriff Matthews told Jana they had the gun and claimed it was being tested right now for ballistics. He even gave her this sort of veiled warning, saying, if it leaves this room, I'm going to say, you're exactly right, like implying she was right but couldn't talk about it. Very strange.
Okay, so he says it's being tested right now.
Right then, February 23rd. But Jana later filed a public records request. And guess what? the evidence for that supposed ballistics test. It wasn't actually turned over to the crime lab until March 27th.
March 27th, that's over a month later.
32 days later, to be exact. And, get this, it was turned over just 2 days before the family was scheduled to meet with the district attorney, Pennywise Douciere.
That timing is incredibly suspicious, isn't it? It makes you wonder what testing, if any, was really happening back in February when he claimed it was.
It raises serious questions about the integrity of the investigation, absolutely.
And then there was the issue with the ring camera footage from the house. That could have been vital, right?
Crucial. Absolutely crucial. But Detective Alan Irby told the family it was unaccessible, his reasoning, that the camera needed Wi-Fi.
Even though the family offered proof there was footage available, they even confirmed the camera had access.
Exactly. They had emails showing footage could be accessed, confirmed the connection, but the detective just stuck to the unaccessible line. And adding to the pile of unanswered questions, the gunshot residue test, or GSR, Crystal's hands were supposedly bagged at the scene for testing.
Supposedly.
Right. But the family has never received any confirmation that testing was actually performed. They have no idea if it was done, what the results were, nothing.
And Tony Jones's hands.
Never tested? Not at all. Which, in a potential gunshot scenario, is a standard procedure you'd absolutely expect.
So the investigation itself is riddled with these inconsistencies, these dismissals, these delays. But Tony Jones's behavior after Crystal's death, that adds another deeply disturbing layer.
It really does. And, when you look at how people grieve, his actions seem, well, jarringly out of place for a supposedly devastated widower. Just 4 days after Crystal died. 4 days. And minutes before what would have been their first Valentine's Day apart, he Googled, what is the appropriate time to date after death of a spouse?
4 days later.
Wow.
That's quick.
Incredibly quick. And then on Valentine's Day itself, 5 days after her death, he posts this public status on Facebook.
What did it say?
Well, made it through the first night back at home. Wasn't as bad as I thought. # long right ahead.
Wasn't as bad as I thought. That's
Yeah.
cold. It doesn't sound like grief at all. It sounds almost like relief.
It's profoundly unsettling, isn't it? And his actions continued in that vein. There was a GoFundMe set up for Crystal's services. When Tony found out, he wouldn't get the money directly because, it was used to pay for the funeral home, the services, all that.
What did he do?
He logged into Crystal's own Facebook account. And he blocked all of her family members, her mother, her siblings, everyone.
He blocked them from her account, so they couldn't see her pictures, her memories.
Cut them off completely. From years of shared memories, photos, videos, it seems like such a deliberate, almost punitive act. It suggests his focus wasn't on honoring Crystal or supporting her grieving family, but maybe more on control, or perhaps anger about the money.
It seems incredibly callous. And the disrespect didn't end there, did it? With her remains.
No, it didn't. He refused to return Crystal's ashes to the funeral home so they could be properly divided, as the family had discussed. He denied her mother and her siblings any portion of her ashes. He only gave some to her 2 sons eventually.
That's heartbreaking for a grieving mother and siblings.
Absolutely. And when confronted about all this, about his behavior, his response was just vile. He sent a text to Crystal's brother, Dane. It said, and I'm quoting the text with its typo, "Man, all I can say is already I'll have mental problems. You all need to get some help."
Mocking them about mental health. After his wife's death was ruled a suicide, which he himself apparently attributed to a medication change.
Exactly. The hypocrisy is stunning. He's blaming her death on mental health issues related to medication, but then he mocks her family for, quote, having mental problems. It just doesn't add up.
It's really disturbing.
And it gets worse. Days after Corbin, Crystal's oldest son, finally received his mother's ashes, improperly mailed, by the way, in a beat-up box, sent all the way to New York where he was living.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Days after that, Tony posted that public status mocking mental health. It also seemed to highlight a sort of local bias, perhaps. A funeral home director, apparently a friend of Tony's, initially promised the family help, but after Jana contacted him, he just stopped responding, refused to follow through.
Okay, so we have the questionable investigation, Tony's disturbing behavior.
Yeah.
But now we get to what the family believes is the motive, the part that Sheriff Matthews allegedly called irrelevant, Tony Jones's past.
This is where things take an even darker turn. We're talking about very serious accusations involving inappropriate relationships with underage girls. Tony's ex-wife, Shanna Jones, she came forward. She told Jana their marriage ended specifically because of these relationships.
His ex-wife confirmed this.
Yes. And she didn't just make accusations. She confirmed that Tony was actually found guilty by Child Protective Services, CPS, on a charge involving an inappropriate relationship with a minor. Jana even received an official letter stating he couldn't be in a home with underage girls present.
Guilty by CPS. That's significant.
Hugely significant. Jana said the case was turned over to the district attorney's office in Morehouse Parish, but apparently nothing ever came of it. She explicitly voiced her fear that Tony's karate school was, in her words, a bleeding ground for this kind of behavior.
So Jana takes this information, this confirmation from the ex-wife, the CPS finding, Shanna's contact details. She gives all of this to Sheriff Scott Matthews. And what does he do?
According to Jana, he never contacted Jana. Never followed up.
But it gets worse, doesn't it? There's a recording.
Yes. In a recorded conversation on March 21st, 2023, Sheriff Matthews is heard stating unequivocally that Tony Jones had never been investigated by any agencies, including CPS.
He denied it completely, even though Jana had given him the information and the contact for the ex-wife who confirmed it.
A direct, flat-out contradiction to the evidence Jana provided. It's deeply concerning, to say the least.
And then another witness came forward, someone who knew Tony well.
Right, Pastor Lance Nugent. He wasn't just Tony's former co-instructor at their martial arts studio, Inner Peace Martial Arts. He actually married Crystal and Tony and baptized them. Pastor Nugent told Jana a really disturbing story. As their classes got bigger, he started noticing a pattern. Tony seemed to almost exclusively focus on stretching the teenage girls and adult women, rarely the boys, and often the way he did it made Pastor Nugent uncomfortable. He said it looked inappropriate.
And he confronted Tony about it.
Multiple times, yes. He raised concerns about this pattern repeatedly.
And this escalated.
It did. Tony apparently asked Pastor Nugent if he could start working with the youth group at Nugent's church. Now, Pastor Nugent, whose first cousin happens to be the sheriff of Morehouse Parish, decided he needed to vet Tony properly before letting him near the kids.
Smart move. What did he find?
He uncovered that Tony had, and this is a direct quote Pastor Nugent shared, more than one case investigated against him involving underage girls in Morehouse Parish. Pastor Nugent even tracked down and spoke to Scott Petrus, who was the father of one of the girls involved in one of these investigations.
Wow.
Yeah. So, armed with this information, Pastor Nugent confronted Tony directly, nose to nose, as he put it, at the martial arts studio. He let Tony know he knew about the Scott Petrus situation. And the very next day, Crystal calls Pastor Nugent, yelling, cursing him out.
So Crystal knew. She knew he'd been confronted about it.
That's what Pastor Nugent concluded. It confirmed for him that Crystal was aware of the allegations. And that whole story the family was told later about them falling out over an air conditioner job. Pastor Nugent said that was a complete fabrication, a lie to cover the real reason for their split.
This paints a picture where Crystal wasn't just unaware. She likely knew about these serious allegations against her husband.
It certainly seems that way, and it potentially puts her in a very difficult, maybe even dangerous position. We also know, just 4 days before she died, Crystal sent a text to a friend. She mentioned catching Tony's daughter, Hannah, on Snapchat talking to someone, potentially older men. Hannah wasn't supposed to be on social media. Crystal wrote that Tony always defended his daughter in these situations, which always made Crystal the bad guy.
So tension in the household, Crystal potentially aware of Tony's past. And then, after her death, Tony's actions seemed to reinforce this idea that maybe Crystal was seen as an obstacle.
It's hard not to see it that way. Just 9 days after Crystal died, suddenly, Hannah has her own public Facebook page. And who is she friends with? Her biological mother, Holly Carpenter, who had apparently been kept at arm's length during Tony and Crystal's marriage, and also Holly's sister, who, it turns out, had served prison time related to the death of her own infant child.
And Tony became friends with them too.
Yes. Tony also became Facebook friends with both Holly and her sister, joking online, commenting like they were old pals, forever friends. It really does suggest that Crystal's presence was perhaps preventing these relationships and this kind of life that Tony maybe wanted. Her death seemed to immediately open those doors.
So the family, armed with all this information, this timeline, these witness accounts, they kept pushing. But they just kept hitting walls, didn't they?
Relentless resistance, it seems. The Louisiana State Police, who briefly got involved, closed their investigation after just 10 days. 10 days. Their official reason: lack of cooperation from West Carroll Parish authorities.
And the timing of that closure was suspicious too, wasn't it?
Very suspicious. It happened right after Jana got back from a trip to Washington, D.C., where she'd gone to present her findings, all this evidence, to congressional leaders trying to get federal help.
Then came another huge breakthrough, but also another sign of potential obstruction. The original police report.
Yes, the one the DA, Pennywise Douciere, had refused to give Jana and Dane a copy of back in March 2023. They finally got it, incredibly, through a response from the Arkansas State Medical Board, the ABME, almost 2 years later, on April 14th, 2025.
And what did that original report show?
It completely contradicted the version of events the family had been allowed to read in the DA's office. Specifically, it did not back up Tony Jones's story, and critically, guess what it included?
Let me guess. The cell phone records.
Bingo. The very same cell phone records Sheriff Matthews had dismissed as ludicrous and irrelevant. They were right there in the original police report all along.
Unbelievable. It really points towards a deliberate effort to hide or downplay crucial evidence, doesn't it?
It certainly raises profound questions about transparency and potential manipulation of the official record. And that brings us to the pathologist, Dr. Frank Peretti, who did the autopsy. His initial report was sloppy, to say the least. It had numerous errors, misspelled Crystal's name, other internal mistakes, just basic errors.
It was updated right.
It was. An updated autopsy report came out 10 months later in December 2023. But the family believes Dr. Peretti essentially just rubber-stamped the police narrative. They don't feel he conducted a truly thorough, independent, unbiased examination, especially given the initial errors and the surrounding circumstances.
So they filed complaints against him?
Yes, significant ones, with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, the Arkansas Attorney General's Office, and the National Association of Medical Examiners. They're challenging the integrity of his findings.
And has there been any updates on those complaints? Or the case in general?
There have been some developments. Both the Arkansas AG's office and the DOJ Civil Rights Division have acknowledged they received the complaints. That's a start. And significantly, on May 9th, 2025, the Arkansas Health Department responded to a very strong rebuttal Jana filed against the State Medical Board's initial decision regarding Dr. Peretti. The Health Department decided to send the matter back to the Medical Board for further discussion and review.
Okay, so that's potentially good news. It means they're reconsidering.
It's cautiously optimistic news, yes. It shows that Jana's persistence is forcing these bodies to take a second look, that the questions aren't just going away. It suggests the final word hasn't been written on the medical examination aspect.
But the official narratives about the case itself still seem conflicted.
Very much so. You still have the Louisiana State Police saying their case is closed due to lack of cooperation from West Carroll. Yet, Sheriff Matthews' own lawyer has publicly stated that the case remains open, which is it. You can't have it both ways.
That's incredibly confusing and does nothing to build confidence.
Not at all. And remember that detail about the sheriff claiming his department didn't even have policy and procedure manuals? Local news reported that. It's just an astonishing admission for any law enforcement agency. It paints a picture of dysfunction at best.
So Crystal Jones's story, when you lay it all out, it's just this incredibly difficult, frustrating journey for her family. A search for truth against what feels like a wall of resistance.
It really is a harrowing example. You have the questionable scene from the very beginning, the alleged efforts to cover up a very dark past, these glaring conflicts of interest, the stonewalling, and through it all, you have Jana and her family fighting relentlessly, meticulously gathering evidence, refusing to accept the official story.
They absolutely refuse to let Crystal's memory be defined by a narrative they are convinced is false. And honestly, listening to all this, they've put together a really compelling case, haven't they? It demands, at the very least, a fresh, unbiased investigation from authorities outside that immediate area. Their dedication is incredible, just seeking answers, seeking justice for Crystal.
Absolutely. And we have to thank Jana again profoundly for her bravery in sharing her sister's story, for allowing us to bring it to you, the listener. Her fight is clearly far from over.
It really is. And for you listening, if you have any information at all related to the death of Crystal McCrory Jones, please consider reaching out. You can contact the appropriate authorities, maybe state or federal. Or, if you want to remain anonymous but still help the family's efforts, Jana has channels where you can contact her directly. Even the smallest pieces of information can make a difference in finally uncovering the truth for Crystal.